You ever notice how almost all the leaders of almost all the countries in the Western world, particularly in the English-speaking Western world, seem kind of the same? They're all what we call neoliberal. They're all weak and fearful, if you think about it. And yet, if you listen to them talk, you'd think they were omnipotent. We're going to reverse global climate change. We're going to vaccinate the world. We're going to end all human prejudice and replace it with equity. We're going to spread democracy to the untutored nations with guns, and they're going to love us for it. We can do all these things because we're all powerful. We're like gods. You shall have no gods before us. Now, mostly they're puny people, but when they speak, they sound like Caesar, standing in purple robes in the forum, commanding the known world. Joe Biden very often sounds like this. So does that squeaky little woman with weird teeth who runs New Zealand. They all sound like this. They're unbelievably grandiose. It's by design. They'd rather talk about redeeming humanity than bother to fix your kid's school or replace a stop sign at the end of your block. So you got to wonder, why do they talk this way? And the answer, of course, is because they're terrified. They claim to be powerful because they know they're not. It's a bluff. It's a calculated pose. In fact, they know exactly how weak they are. They understand how little popular support they actually have, and they can feel their grasp slipping. And if you wonder if that's true, notice how they overreact to the slightest challenge to their power. Remember a year ago when the QAnon shaman skipped through Congress on his mescaline trip, giggling and spreading good vibes? It was kind of amusing, but Democrats in Washington were panicked by it, so panicked, they called in the U.S. Army and sent that poor guy to prison. It's weird how touchy they get when you suggest they stole the presidential election. Wonder why. But this is not the behavior of secure leaders. This is how despots act when they fear they're about to be overthrown. And there's no more fearful despot in the world than Justin Trudeau of Canada. Over the span of just a few years, Trudeau has turned a nation long famous for Molson and sled dogs and niceness into a relentlessly punitive surveillance state. People have long whispered, in dead seriousness, that Justin Trudeau is the biological son of Fidel Castro. You could laugh it off, but now it's becoming pretty easy to believe. Trudeau has used systematically COVID to short-circuit democracy in Canada and to end organized Christianity there. Canadians can no longer travel freely within their own country. They can no longer return to their own country at certain parts. Pastors have been imprisoned for holding church services. The unvaccinated can be sent to jail for buying certain products in stores. In the town of Gatineau, family members were arrested for celebrating New Year's Eve in their own home. Every large institution in Canada pretends like all of this is perfectly normal. It's always been this way. Canadian media, which are largely controlled by the government, support these policies and Trudeau uncritically. In Nova Scotia, protests against Justin Trudeau's vaccine mandates are now banned by law. Rarely has a nation changed this quickly or more unequivocally for the worse. And last week, thousands of Canadian truckers reached their limit. A convoy of truckers converged on the capital city, Ottawa, to demand, peacefully, cheerfully, but persistently, an end to Justin Trudeau's tyranny. Justin Trudeau's response to this display of democracy, he fled the city. Trudeau evacuated his official residence and hid in an undisclosed location. He is still cowering there tonight. Will he come back? Has he abdicated? Will Canada be ruled by a junta of truckers? Well, not at this point. He emerged by video conference from his lair to declare that Canadian citizens who disagree with him are in fact attacking democracy. Watch.
There is a right to protest. There is a right to make your voices heard loudly and clearly. But there is not a right to shut down our democracy or our democratic processes. There is not a right to abuse, intimidate, and harass your fellow citizens.
So expressing your views is an attack on democracy. And by the way, how dare you express your views as if you were free people? That's tyranny. Democracy is when you obey like serfs. Trudeau just effectively said that. And then because he has no self-awareness whatsoever, Trudeau announced that he's contracted COVID, which is perfect. In other words, take this shot or else, as you can see from the fact I am now sick, it works perfectly. If Canada weren't a country, it would be a remarkable dark comedy. So you may be wondering about these hordes of Visigoths who's descended on Ottawa, the ones who drove Justin Trudeau out of the city. What do they look like? Well, here they are.
Hi, baby! Yeah!
I love you too.
Freedom, love, patriotic displays, waving Canadian flags, terrifying. But if you look closely at those pictures, you can see the real problem. These were working class people. They're the guys who deliver your Amazon boxes. And Justin Trudeau is repulsed by them. These people have stepped way outside their lane. Just leave the package on the porch and get the hell out of here. But they haven't gotten the hell out of there. They're still in Ottawa. And Justin Trudeau won't meet with them because he never meets with people like this. Not simply because they are blue collar and dirty, though obviously they are, but because they disagree with him. As a reminder from Justin Trudeau, that's what democracy is. Democracy is lecturing people who nod a lot in response. Watch him explain.
I have attended protests and rallies in the past when I agreed with the goals, when I supported the people expressing their concerns and their issues. Black Lives Matter is an excellent example of that.
So I'll meet with the people at a rally as long as I agree with their goals. As long as they agree with me, it's totally fine. Like Black Lives Matter.